Hi, I'm John. Did you come here looking for financial wisdom? Great. Have a seat and let's watch this weird, old-school video about how a toilet works.
When the handle is pressed, a lever inside lifts. It pulls a rubber stopper called a flapper valve from the bottom of the tank. Instantly, tank water is released to gravitational forces, which draw it down the water closet's main channel toward the base. As water circles the bowl's upper rim, some is forced through holes called rim slots. They flush tiny jets along the sides to clean the bowl. Most of the water, however, rushes down and through a narrow opening near the base. There, in a carefully formed mix of air and water, an eductor, or pulling action, is generated. At the same time, the release of tank water pushes bowl water up the siphon channel and over the lip. Its spill pattern creates a siphon along the underside. Together, eduction and siphonic action draw water and waste from the bowl. It has nowhere else to go but out the sewer line. The double action process continues until water levels are too low to run over the lip. When the flow ends, so does siphonic action. Water trickling down from the tank now rises in the bowl and siphon channel. Its presence seals noxious sewer fumes below the gas trap. Meanwhile, back at the tank, two things happen. As water drained from the tank, the flapper valve dropped, resealing the main channel. The ball float, having reached the bottom of its swing down the tank, fully opened the inlet valve attached to the other end. Water begins to flood the tank again. As the tank refills, the ball float rises until somewhere near the top, it closes the inlet valve, cycle complete.
Ready.
That's how a toilet works, and that's exactly how your emergency fund works also. You're going to start with a $1,000 emergency fund. Have a garage sale, work some overtime. Drive for Uber or Lyft, or get creative in some other ways to gather $1,000 into an account just for emergencies. Now, let's define an emergency. According to Webster's Dictionary, an emergency is an unforeseen combination of circumstances or the resulting state that calls for immediate action. An emergency is something that you didn't have any way to anticipate. An emergency is not, I have a wedding to go to this weekend and I need to get my nails done. An emergency is not, my football team made it to the Super Bowl and I need a bigger TV to watch the game. And an emergency is not, I've had the worst day at work, I ran out of gas on the way home, and if I have to cook dinner tonight, there's going to be an emergency. That comes out of a food budget of some sort. Emergency funds are just for emergencies. John 16:33 says, I have told you these things, so that in me you may have peace. In this world you will have trouble, but take heart, I have overcome the world. In that verse, Jesus is telling us that in this world we will have trouble. So, doesn't it make sense to have a plan to deal with the trouble that comes our way? When emergencies happen, they're often at the most inconvenient times, and that really stinks. So, here's your John 16:33 emergency fund. Just to review how the system works, water comes into the toilet from the line attached to the wall and fills the tank. When the float valve gets to the top, it stops the flow of water, and then it just waits for something stinky to happen. Your emergency fund works exactly the same way. To get you started, your emergency fund should be about $1,000 that does nothing except sit in the emergency fund account and wait for something stinky to happen. Once you pay off all your debt, you'll want about 3 to 6 months of expenses in your emergency fund. However, to get you started, a $1,000 emergency fund should take care of most things that will derail your financial plan. Let's just say that you went out running errands, and when you got home, you discovered that the water heater in the garage had sprung a leak. It didn't do any damage to the house, but you're going to need to replace the water heater, and that's going to cost about $500. You have a friend that's pretty handy, so you go to the hardware store, buy a new water heater, and your friend helps you install it. But now your emergency fund is only at half a tank. You stop all extra cash distributions and start the flow back into your emergency fund until you get it filled back up again. If you're paying off debt with all of the excess cash that you generate, you stop until you get back to $1,000 in your emergency fund. Once you have replenished the $1,000 in your emergency fund, the emergency funding stops, and everything goes back into paying off debt. You have the emergency fund tank filled back up again, and it's just sitting there waiting for something else stinky to happen. Again, the initial emergency fund needs to be about $1,000. Once you get your debt paid off, we're going to move that big debt snowball payment you've been making into filling up an emergency fund that will cover 3 to 6 months of expenses. You're probably wondering, why should the fully funded emergency fund be 3 to 6 months of expenses? Saving 3 to 6 months of expenses in an emergency fund lines up with the biblical admonition to look at an ant, watch it closely, let it teach you a thing or two. Nobody has to tell it what to do. All summer it stores up food, at harvest it stockpiles provisions. So, how long are you going to laze around doing nothing? How long before you get out of bed? A nap here, a nap there, a day off here, a day off there. Sit back, take it easy. Do you know what comes next? Just this. You can look forward to a dirt poor life. Poverty, your permanent house guest. Instead of living with poverty as a permanent house guest, the Bible advises you to make it your ambition to lead a quiet life. You should mind your own business and work with your hands, just as we told you, so that your daily life may win the respect of outsiders and so that you'll not be dependent on anybody. Having 3 to 6 months of expenses in an emergency fund is a good buffer against a sudden job loss, a health issue, and any number of troubles that we've been warned will happen in this world. It's a good plan for many of the unexpected things that we can expect to happen sometime in our lives. However, the short 3 to 6 month time frame also protects us from our tendency to hoard wealth and rely on money instead of relying on God for our provision in this life. Jesus told us in John 16:33 that in this world you will have trouble. Your emergency fund is your plan to deal with the trouble in this life that is most likely waiting for you just down the road.